it looks like the biggest impact on the future of recruitment, the trend that you guys think is going to be the biggest, is the growing skills gap and talent shortages. Great news. We're actually going to be talking about that in today's webinar. So thanks so much for everybody participating. I'm going to go ladies first here. Kendra Cato, welcome. Kendra's a staffing industry powerhouse, renowned for her ability to connect with people and businesses. With decades of experience spanning strategy, sales, marketing, and technology, Kendra understands the vital role of both people and tech driving success. Currently, she's leading strategic partnerships at Advanced Partners. Beyond that, Kendra is an influential speaker, co-author, and champion for diversity and equality in the industry. So welcome, Kendra.
Thank you, Storm.
On to Rob Green. Rob is the founder and CEO of RecTech. He's a seasoned veteran in the recruitment and HR tech world and is passionate about helping businesses thrive through smart tech choices. Rob and his team are changing the game with RecTech, a platform designed to help make tech buying easier and more transparent, and the recent recipient of the Technical Innovation Reward at the 2024 OnRec Awards. So let's hear it for Rob. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you inviting me along.
And rounding out our panel, we have Tracker's very own CEO, Andy Jones. With over a decade at the helm and a quarter century of experience in IT and staffing, Andy's a true industry expert. He brings a deep understanding of everything from business process to customer relationships, making him a perfect guide in today's webinar.
Thanks, Tommy. It's like the root that.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get kicked off. So the first question I have for you guys, from demographic shifts to economic pressures to technology running rampant, what are the top emerging trends that you are seeing that it's affecting the future of work today?
Shall I pick that one up, Stormy? Thanks, Stormy, by the way. Yeah, so guys, it's just a stranger this you've chatted with me many times, and we have good dialogue. So hopefully this will be another one like that. But yeah, keen to sort of get straight in. I mean, we had the poll at the front there. We sort of see what we think the key trends are, and actually what our audience think the key trends are. So it'd be good to get your perspectives on some of this stuff as well as we chat through this topic. We know that we have multi-generational workforces right now. We always have. I guess it would be good to probably discuss and get your guys' take on Gen Z or Gen Z for our American audience in terms of whether we consider that to be a bigger contrast compared to most previous sort of multi-generational workforces. We know, for instance, that they're very tech savvy. They know only really digital, and so with the power of smartphones, with social media, they're exceptionally aware, socially, economically, as well as everything else, and also exceptionally self-sufficient when it comes to upskilling themselves with knowledge, because it's just a Google away. So there's a whole piece around that. They've lived through the 2008 crash. They've lived through a pandemic in their working lives. So some would say that they're a risk-averse bunch, but others would say that they're not, because they actually know that there is an outcome to some of this stuff. So I think for me, this is an open-minded bunch, more of an open-minded bunch than I would say we've probably experienced before in multi-generational workforces. So it'd be good to sort of get, Kendra, I guess, your take on sort of that Gen Z piece, and whether or not we see that as being it's a change. Is it one of the bigger changes that we've seen more recently in terms of the build-up or makeup of a workforce?
Absolutely. I think that it's not only is it such a big change, it's forcing our industry and recruiters across the board to kind of get more creative and innovate, because we hear so much about the need to embrace digital recruitment. And that goes, I'm not just talking about seamless candidate experience powered by technology. Obviously, that's very, very important. That's what you should be aiming for if you haven't already been iterating on it for the last 5 or 15 years, maybe. But with having our first truly digital native generation, it's just so important to differentiate yourself from other staffing firms near me that they do find on Google, to your point, Andy. And that means recruiters are having to get creative, and in doing so, they're winning big and small, right? I have an IT recruiter friend of mine who wrote a thought leadership piece on LinkedIn that was comparing recruitment and the job search to a popular rom-com. And she shared it as a follow-up at networking events, and it worked. She got a level of engagement she hadn't seen before. And so using AI-driven recruitment tools to streamline the hiring process and appeal to their tech-savvy nature is an absolute must and a yes. But using automation to send a fun survey or a prompt for them to consider before your first intro call, that's that human touch that makes you memorable, right? Even especially today when we're navigating today's tough market. And so we're thinking about embracing that digital recruitment, but also how can you get creative with it? And that includes leveraging social media platforms. I know we'll talk more about this, but LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. You really want to showcase your personal brand, company culture, job opportunities, and employee testimonials. And the reason being, to bring it back to your point, Andy, is that Gen Z really values authenticity, and they want to work for companies that align with their values. So when you share those experiences and your company's mission and its commitment to DEI and sustainability, you're giving everyone a chance to hear you and your company's voice and your personal touch, so that you're everywhere when they do happen to look. And you can use AI to drive them there.
I mean, it seems like the smartphone is the place to go, right? And we see that sort of shift now. You mentioned about social media, and I know we'll touch on things like the gig economy and stuff like this. But for me, the way that people are sort of shifting away from traditional job boards, certainly for maybe some of the more blue collar, the gig economy, where it's much more about like the here and now and the flexibility of work and so on, is that social media is becoming a really powerful tool for sourcing candidates, over and above the job boards. Rob, I don't know if you've seen anything, in terms of from the technical side, this sort of drive now to the demands of your clients to sort of look at, we're much more interested in sort of the candidate sourcing from social channels as we are in the corporate space as well as in the agency space. I don't know if that's something that you see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that actually isn't something that's new. I think that's been around for quite a while. You've got companies like Adway, for example, that's all they do. I think the maybe the pressures on people to find the right candidate has grown, with the market becoming perhaps a little bit more candidate driven. I know you mentioned the gig economy already, but that's had a big impact on the industry too.
Yeah, and Kendra, to your point, so you were talking about authenticity, right? And the fact that the agencies, although you have this sort of fast-moving, tech-savvy bunch who are able to work, exceptionally flexibly using technology, that actually there is this authenticity play. There is a need for career development, for a longer term view, for not just them, but the agencies being much more interested in their career development rather than just being, well, I'm just going to make this placement, fill this one now. It seems to be like that white collar piece and the blue collar. They both have slightly different influences, but still they're still affected by this phenomenon.
Completely agree. Yes. Yes. I think that we're going to continue to see a focus on coaching, a focus on development. It's important to Gen Z, to their values. And also it's important to our success, and to make sure that we're developing our team to be prepared for these conversations that are almost all virtual these days. And that takes a different level of EQ and soft skills. And I know we'll get into that, but there's going to continue to be a resurgence and a focus on the touch that comes with all of these amazing tools that we have at our disposal today.
So what do we think of the sort of the key tools, if you like, or tricks to building brand loyalty? So as an agency, building brand loyalty with Gen Z or Gen Z that means that they can be exceptionally flexible on one side, but actually that they can be seen as being much more passionate and you know, almost tuned into the demands or the needs of the Gen Z population, which is that they want to see people nurture them or nurture them through. How do you think that? What do you think are going to be the sort of the key drivers for building loyalty overall?
I think it really will lean on focusing on your mission, your values, bringing it back to that. What are your stances on sustainability, on DEI? Those are the things that can help younger workers come in and feel good about the work they're doing. Work is work.
Yeah.
What's making you feel good about showing up for this particular company or firm every day? And so that focus, I know there's been a swing in the pendulum, excuse me. I know there's been a swing, but seeing it hopefully start to right itself as the different generations meet in the middle.
Yeah. And what about, and Rob, your take on like how the clients will need to change? Because, you know, look at the gig economy, right? So, you know, the rise in technology, this is a phenomenon. You know, everyone's come across, you know, Uber and Lyft, and I think maybe the epiphany of this is that, you know, most Uber drivers that I meet have got the Lyft badge on the other side, right? So they're able to literally switch multiple times between Uber and Lyft in a single shift, and I guess that's the key piece. So, you know, looking at that from a client's perspective rather than from an agency's perspective, is that there seems to be a huge drive now for flexibility. And, you know, look at the rise of mental health, or the awareness of mental health, right? And how important that is in terms of like the work-life balance and so on. So that flexibility seems to be sort of one of the key drivers of that. So do you think that you know, is becoming a really important factor in terms of like the application of technology or process in general from a client's point of view that says, yeah, no, we can drive loyalty through offering this level of flexibility?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, to your point about Uber and Lyft, I mean, the amount of times I've had a delivery delivered to the door and it's come out of a Just Eat box, you know, you've got people out there that are trying to, I suppose, get the work-life balance that they want. And I think a lot of this, you know, it kind of stemmed from the pandemic. I can tell you as a small business, we have found immense value in the gig economy, and it's opened up, you know, skills and resources that never existed in our business before, and it's allowed us to achieve a lot more value through adopting remote workers for short periods without the commitment of employment. You know, I don't know if we would have got our business to the stage we're at today without access to those resources, being completely truthful. And, you know, I think whilst most people didn't envy me for running a business during the midst of a global pandemic, you know, the gig economy wouldn't be anywhere near as prevalent without that happening in the first place. And companies like ours might not be here without access to those resources.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kendra used the word pendulum earlier, which I think is quite cool in that we see a lot of this sort of change, this demand for flexibility. Yeah, we see a very you know, authentic led generation of workers really in this space, and it's going to make up 30% of our workforce soon, right? So yet we have this kind of like this swing that says that we'll kind of want all the flexibility and everything else, but we also, where does that come in terms of like, you know, job security, career development and so on? So there seems to be this sort of, you know, this split between wanting all this sort of flexibility and so on, but actually wanting job security as well at the same time. But there doesn't seem to be, it hasn't seemed to have landed on one place. Now maybe it's a difference between, you know, sort of the white collar and blue collar traditional workforce that we see, you know, people being able to work and then work a shift, and then 5 o'clock they can call down on the money they just earned to put gas in the tank for the next day and so on. This is really fueling, essentially fueling that gig economy, because we're able to work it. So you're right, Rob, to your point, it's great for us because we can, you know, you used Fiverr or Upwork or whatever, right, to get certain things done from a marketing side or whatever. I've all come across those sites, and it's great that you can hire somebody for 2 or 3 days to knock out a nice presentation or something like that. On their side, it's like, yeah, well, this is great because I can literally just work when I want around, you know, my other commitments in life, whether that's my children or just my desires to only work a 4-day week or 3-day week. And yet we do have this Gen Z, this need for nurture and career development. That seems to be this pendulum. I wonder if at some point this is going to sort of swing back, and agencies and clients alike need to be almost ready for the fact or prepared for the fact that actually there is this slight contrast in the needs of Gen Z, and that seems to be one that's coming out.
I think the other thing, just to kind of add to that, the thing that you need to be, I suppose, a bit mindful of when you are leveraging the gig economy is that you there have people, you know, these platforms you mentioned earlier, like Fiverr and Upwork, and there's plenty more of them popping up. You know, they're brilliant for allowing you to see essentially a marketplace of specific people with specific sets of skills, but you've got people in there that are at the top of their game, and you've got people in there that are at the bottom of their game that have maybe found it difficult to find work, or you know, they've maybe been to a dozen interviews and they haven't been successful for whatever reason, and they've come to that option as a conclusion for not only is this good for me, but actually you know, maybe the number of options they have are limited. And then you've got people that are very, very good at what they do that maybe aren't earning what they need to be earning, or maybe not getting the level of flexibility from their employer that they need, and they feel like there's a better option out there. I can manage my own time. I can work it around the schools. You know, there's a great deal of benefit from being in the gig economy as someone that's actually providing those services.
You're so right, Rob. I have a few girlfriends who are much cooler than me and are in the creative space, whether it's advertising, agency, marketing, and the market's been rough, obviously, for them the last couple of years. And I've seen all of them go to the gig economy, go to these platforms, get some really cool projects to add to their portfolio and while they're doing consulting as well, right? But with the goal of, well, I can at least build my brand and build my expertise through these platforms. But I wonder, when I'm talking to them, I wonder, why am I the one to bring up staffing firms? You know, why are you only thinking about this because that's the industry I play in? Again, they're way cooler than me. So how do we attract those folks? And how is this impacting staffing firms, right? We've got 45% of leaders that are concerned about economic conditions impacting their business, according to a recent report, right? That's nearly half of staffing leaders. And there's a reason why we're hearing this growing collective voice across our industry for the importance of advocacy and for influencing policy decisions that can really impact our industry. So obviously these economic conditions can have a direct impact on the demand for temporary staffing services, but staffing firms that have diversified their client base, have adapted their strategies to embrace gig economy, have implemented the right technologies, enter new industries, et cetera, that's how they can hold steady in any market. But I do really believe strongly, I'm passionate about this, that we're going to continue to hear more about the need for advocacy and, you know, policy decisions being influenced.
Yeah, you made a good point there as well, Ken Razova, about building personal brand, because as soon as you go, you know, you start to look at dabbling into the gig economy, then, you know, you do have to tap into a new set of skills, which is building a personal brand. And to your point, Rob, you could have good people and rubbish people sitting in those sites offering their services, and you're at the peril of the star review process from that point on, right? So like anything you do when you go on to travel sites and you book a hotel or whatever, you're looking at the star rating. And if everything I buy on Amazon, I'm looking for the star rating and the number of people that are reviewed. It tells me how popular it is and how many people want to talk about that thing. So you become literally then, you know, a prisoner of the review process. And building that personal brand is essential. And if you may be brilliant but don't have the skills to do that bit of it and actually suffer in the gig economy as opposed to actually thrive, whereas someone who may not be so good but get their personal brand across exceptionally well may thrive in that economy. So I think it's you know, as the English would say, horses for courses. It's good for some people. I think that it works really well in that space. But others, I think, may struggle on it, and it comes down to, say, tapping into those skills that otherwise you don't necessarily normally need to use in your normal everyday, especially if you're looking in, you know, graphics design or in programming or things like that, where traditionally you're not, you know, you don't need to be particularly extrovert to work in those spaces. So yeah, it's a good point you make there.
Yeah, definitely. I think, okay, I'm going to give it to you straight here. We know that 87% of recruiters right now are saying that it's becoming more difficult to find qualified candidates in this last year.
Yeah,
That's according to
yeah,
an Indeed report, right? So if
yeah.
that's what your recruiters are experiencing, if that's their perception, that's what they're going to get. And so it's important. It's less about extrovert versus introvert, because I've met many an extrovert who lacks EQ, and I've met many an introvert who can hold the best conversation in a group setting. So it's about those soft skills being applied across the board, whether it's adaptability, communication, and problem solving. Those are all more critical than ever. And I'm not just talking about your candidates, right? I'm not just talking about the graphic designers. I'm talking about your recruiters too, because as they continue to use AI to engage with candidates, you better be investing your time and funds into coaching. You need your recruiters to be able to quickly adjust, right? To actively listen. That's a lost skill and these days, to navigate social interactions, show empathy, and really just make informed decisions based on emotional cues and based off emotional cues that are on video. So AI ain't there yet. So coaching is definitely a must. It's a must.
Yeah, it's a wicked point, and that's, you know, and it will, I think it will, you know, fall in nicely into the next section. But you're right, the whole balance now between around AI, you know, and that personal touch, the coaching, the empathy, and everything else, the personal touch, the stuff that makes recruiters tick.
Yeah.
That balance has to be looked at exceptionally well as we go forward. And I think we'll touch on that, I think, in the next section. But yeah, that's a massive
And
point.
and the upside is, by emphasizing the development of soft skills across our workforce, right? We can really create a more agile, a more collaborative, and inclusive work environment,
Yeah.
which, you know, excites me. And this may be my opportunity for a shameless plug for women of color in staffing, for those women and allies who are looking for some of that development and coaching. We are here, joined today. And yeah, so let's figure out how we can get those soft skills, prioritize those, and really help us navigate that very real and sometimes perceived skills gap.
I think we've definitely seen a fundamental shift in the way that candidates are being screened. I think that many people and many organisations have long campaigned to ditch the CV, right? I think the world has opened its eyes to assessing candidates really for who they are rather than what they've done. And I think we've seen many tools coming onto the market that assess a candidate's potential and help them measure some of those soft skills that you mentioned earlier, like adaptability and communication, problem solving. And these tools are really no longer reserved for the larger corporates with huge TA budgets. You know, they're being used to tremendous effect right across the board, from scaling startups all the way through to global enterprises. And I've actually just worked with a small UK-based recruitment agency, and they didn't send me a single CV. I found that really refreshing as well. You know, they just sent me a number of short video profiles featuring candidates who were a strong match for what we needed. And I learned more from those videos than I would have ever learned from reading a CV. And the amount of time that we saved in that process as well, potentially interviewing candidates that weren't a good fit, not just our time, you know, we're saving the candidates' time as well. I feel like there's a huge cultural shift and you know, industry shift going on right now, where we're seeing this sort of fundamental change in technology usage and adoption of technology in that space.
And I think that's a really good one. I mean, we put video into our platform back in 2019, so just before the pandemic, right? And it was very much at that point seen as a nice to have. For us, it was about giving our clients or our clients a much more rounded view of the candidate. Like you say, sort of whites of the eyes. I can see how they come across. Everyone can write a good CV, or most people can write a good CV, but actually when you ask them a question and they haven't had time to massively prepare for that and write 15 drafts and so on and so on, how does that person come across? And that was seen as a nice to have back in 2019. As we went through the pandemic, we just said, let everybody gets video for free, and we can't do anything about this. You've got to use it. And then it became actually much more of an accepted piece, where we now do have, in the same way you have is that some clients will say, we don't really want all the documentation. It's a lot to read. And our clients don't really have the time. They want to hear a summary from us, if you like. Kendra, to your point, this is a personal summary. This isn't AI generated or anything like that. This is, we spoke to these people. This is what they are. And the ones that are most successful, get the most traction, and I suppose, you know, in terms of the ratio of submitted candidates to success, the ones that are doing the best are actually starting to adopt that sort of technology now, which is get a much more rounded view. So it's good that you're seeing that as well, Rob, in terms of, you know, on the cold face when you're in the recruitment process.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I think we're going to go and talk a little bit about AI, right, Andy?
Yeah. Stormy, did we want to head into question, what was it? Second question on here.
We've got, what qualities do you look for when hiring recruiters? That's one of the questions that came through.
Oh yeah, we've got some questions coming in.
Oh yeah, manager.
Okay, is asking.
Let's try this one. I manage a team of tenured recruiters who are not as open to trying something new or changing what has been working with them for 5 to 10 years. Any advice on change management and how to try new things as a team and get their buy-in? It's a great question. I have
I think
go first.
you want to go first, Kendra, on that one? Because we got that one, and we've got this thoughts on the qualities looking for in hiring recruiters. What's your take on that question?
Well, for the change management piece, we come up against this all of the time, right? One thing is finding a naysayer, finding one that really doesn't want to adopt, and digging in with them and figuring out how to get them engaged. That is the most powerful, in my experience, and I've worked with sales teams now for 10 years. That's the most powerful way to get more buy-in. Because if you don't have that one fellow running around saying, why are we doing this? And asking those questions, if he's actually engaged on any level of the program, you will see a swing there. And another piece is, again, that development and coaching. If it's less about, we want you to try this new thing, and more about, we want to prepare you for what the company's doing in 6 months, and moving that goalpost and that perspective so that they understand that it's helping develop them. And these are skills and things that they can take with them anywhere, and that you're investing in them, not we invested in this technology and now you got to come figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, change management, you're right. I mean, change management, you know, there are various phases to change management, right? But fundamentally, you have a period where they're digging in, and then you have a period where actually they're starting to embrace change. And I think that's the, you know, when they're digging in, there is no, you know, there's no point selling to these people because they're not listening, right? There's no noise, but you just have to keep repeating the facts, like you say. This is the way the company's moving. We need to get everybody in line with this and then get them to a point of go, actually, maybe I can get something out of this, and then embrace that, and then change. And I see that, you know, there is a lot of, you know, whenever we do Rec Expo, or we do you know, the trade shows in Vegas or whatever, you know, a lot of the clients that come to us and go, that we don't know what we don't know. And Rob, this is why you're here, right? Your whole business is built around the fact that a lot of our clients have no idea what it is that they're supposed to be doing. Why? Because their heads down in the weeds, running their business every single day. And so we have this sort of, you know, this watch of new technology that's coming out, especially driven by AI, and we'll cover this in the next topic, right? But then we have this sort of like this need for change management, which is everybody's got to get up to speed on this new technology and so on. But we cannot lose the fact that these guys are recruiters, right? And they still need to deal with clients, and they still need to deal with candidates. And the ones that sort of that dig their heels in have got a point in a way, because we can't lose the grassroots stuff of recruitment, even though we need tools to make people more productive. You know, and get rid of some of the, you know, the heavy lifting that we can hopefully address and allow them to do what they do best, which is recruit. So yeah, again, you have this sort of this tussle of, you know, what is the balance really between change management in terms of adoption of new technology and actually good old-fashioned traditional recruitment. So I think, Storm, is that a nice little segue?
Yes, that was actually perfect. I know we have a couple more questions, but we'll save those kind of for the end. Let's go ahead and dive into technical skills that we're seeing, particularly in the realm of AI and data science. So if you want to go ahead and kick us off with that, Andy.
Yeah, so I think, well, I think AI is is a big one to start with, I guess. It's I had this conversation, Rob, you and I had this conversation a little while back, and speaking to a lot of my other partners as well, which is, we consider AI to be really a fundamental part of any platform these days. I mean, everybody should have it. We don't charge for any of our AI, but it has to be done with a balance. And I think it's we see this I can use the analogy, we see this massive wave of AI, and all these sort of niche players that come into the space offering all this fabulous stuff, very small bitty bits of the process, but AI in there to enrich it somehow. And I do wonder how much of that is just going to fall off. I really feel it's the responsibility of ATS CRM providers like ourselves to sort of say that we're the ones that really should be the brains trust on actually how you apply to the process, because we live that process every day, from front office to back office. So we've got the all-seeing eye on process. So we have this wave of AI, and behind that we have this bow wave, and that I feel that is potentially promoting complacency. And I guess that, for me, that's a worry, which is that we are becoming so almost like the faith in AI is so high that it's brilliant, this stuff is great, I don't understand how it works, but it's wonderful. And taking that almost as being like, yeah, but so that's what I should be doing, rather than actually your own intuition. So I think complacency is the risk here as we move forward. And I feel that wash is going to push us more back to traditional recruitment at some point. I think there is, and I think we're going to see that crest fairly soon, which is we tend to be losing focus. Rob, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, actually. And I feel like the introduction of AI into this industry, it isn't just another piece of technology that's come along. It's actually a piece of technology that has created a whole bunch of uncertainty in the recruitment industry, because you mentioned earlier, people don't know what they don't know. Nobody really knows where AI is going to stop, and I think we're still trying to understand the boundaries of AI and what it's going to do. And there are people out there that perhaps think that AI is going to take over the world. But I'll give you a little quote here. This is the quote: AI is powerful in tasks like image recognition and language processing, but it lacks general intelligence or consciousness. It can't think or act independently beyond its programmed tasks, which is done by humans. That answer actually came from ChatGPT. So if AI doesn't think it's going to take over the world, then we're probably safe. Yeah, yes, that's true. Yeah. That said, AI has quickly become mainstream technology. And I'm not just talking about in recruitment, I'm talking about every industry all over the world. And it is definitely not going away. As somebody that's right in the middle of this tech industry, I'm seeing AI being used to incredible effect, saving enormous amounts of time, but it does have to be applied in the right way. And I think on the flip side as well, because there are good and bad things, there's good and bad to everything, right? Lots of people are saving a huge amount of time with AI, but at the same time, we're seeing a huge wave of organizations who aren't using it in the right way, perhaps because many of those people are still learning how to get the best out of it. But most recruiters and sales folks aren't really taking the time to do that, I'm guessing, because like you mentioned earlier, they're quite time poor recruiters. They're up against it. They want to find tools that are going to help them to do more with less time. But they haven't necessarily invested the time to actually learn how to get the best out of it. At the same time, they don't really want to get left behind either. What I can tell you, though, is that if you program AI to find my email address, perform some research on me and my company, and then send me what is clearly an AI-generated email, it is going in the bin.
Absolutely.
Straight away, as soon as I see it. An example here, right? Our company on LinkedIn has got the trademark at the end of it, and people are using AI to generate these lists, to go and find information.
The little R in the circle.
Yeah, we trademarked Direct Tech a few years back, and we put it onto our name on LinkedIn. And the amount of email I get that includes that trademark on the end of it, which you wouldn't type. I don't even know where that is on my keyboard, right? Most people wouldn't have to do that. So as soon as I see that, and I'm giving the game away here, right? Everybody that emails me from now on is going to not have that trademark on there. But as soon as I see that, I'm literally hitting a delete key. I'm not even going to read it, because what you said, Andy, is we're losing the personal touch, and people buy from people. So I think yeah, I'm not saying that AI can't generate great sales emails, but this kind of approach of generating sales emails using AI and sending it to the masses, it's like if I give you a kind of a more recruitment specific approach, back in the old days, if you found an amazing candidate and you sent it to every client in your database, we'd call that the spray and pray approach, and you'd hope that one of those clients is going to pick that up. People are now using that approach with their sales communication. They're automating it, they're getting a machine to write it for them, and they're sending it to a list that a machine's generated based on a set of criteria. It doesn't work. It's not to say it can't, but if that's how we're using it now, then we're never going to change the fact that people buy from people. And I genuinely believe that the best sales are the best deals. They're still being done either over the phone or in person. I don't know how you feel about that, guys.
Well, you do this. I mean, Rob, your model is that you walk them through and talk them through their needs, and even though you have a super cool, powerful tool that now has a web information in there about the needs and the threads and the common threads that run through recruitment technology. But even though you have that tool, you still have it's still a consultative sell. And I think, most of the people on this call will probably have used ChatGPT at some point, written an email and said, oh, that seems quite cool. But that has to be the base from which you build from. Maybe it gives you food for thought in terms of the topics to cover, but making 5 calls and getting 5 meetings versus sending out 100 emails and then waiting for 5 to come back.
Yeah,
You've pissed off 5 people, right? So I think there has to be this, a better play on this technology. It can't be just the faith in it. I think the reliability on it is becoming a little worrying.
Yeah, that's true. It isn't just about what's going to be the most effective in terms of getting you connected to a buyer and closing a deal. You've got to think about things like reputational damage that might occur during that process. If you send an email to 1,000 people, but I was trying to find the right word about swearing. You annoy, half of them. Sometimes. Did you say? Sorry?
I already used that word. Sorry, mate. Yeah.
Oh, fine. Well, if you piss half of them off, right, then there's a reputational element, and I'm not always just hitting delete on these emails. Most of the time I'm reporting junk, so I'm not getting those emails anymore. So now when you do have something you want to email me, I'm probably not going to receive it. So there's an impact there, and it goes beyond people's inboxes. You've got lots of rules in play on the mail service side. Things like Gmail and Microsoft are also scoring these emails, and if they are being reported as spam, then you're not getting through to anyone that's on that domain. There's a real risk here that if you're not writing quality email to the right people and you're not sending, if you're sending spam and it gets reported as such, then you may not actually be able to get hold of the people that you want to get hold of in the first place when you've got something.
Yeah,
exactly.
Any thoughts on this, Kendra? I know it's a little out of your field, but
I'm seeing the questions come in. I think we can easily, some of these are related to this. I think we could easily cover this and continue this conversation. The typical hiring process is very long from a candidate's perspective and often very quiet in regard to information and feedback. Do you have any recommendation for process improvement that would improve the candidate experience, whether it be best practices, technology, et cetera? Feels like we're teeing that conversation up perfectly with what we're discussing right now.
I would love to know where you're seeing these questions, because I can't see them.
I thought maybe, so I'm reading them out.
This is good.
Thanks, Kendra. Appreciate you.
The best PA in the world.
It's a great point, right? We do have all of these amazing tools. We do lean on them more and more heavily to help with the recruiter to find candidates, but what are we doing and how are we helping the candidate experience?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I mean, and this is where I think we can play well. For example, we have a process that says, well, if I have a description of the job and Rob applies for that role, I can look at his resume and I can assess really where I consider there to be a good match. So where that resume is a strong fit, and where there are areas. Rob won't necessarily have written that resume for that job, so there will be deficiencies in there. And identifying where those deficiencies are. For example, we didn't mention a specific package that we needed to be used, or we didn't mention experience in a specific type of management or whatever. So that I think is where you can use tools like AI to help with productivity and understand and assess that. We have a piece that says, right, okay, well, if Rob sends his resume in for an application, by the time he gets to the end of that application screen, we're going to have already done that analysis and we'll ask him those questions. That kind of saves time from the consultant's point of view, going, well, yeah, okay, maybe I've asked him a couple more questions, but actually I've stopped the rot. I've got some of the information that I probably would have needed because he didn't mention that package or he didn't mention that specific type of management. So I'm creating a fuller picture. I'm trying to create a fuller picture from the get-go, and then and then the consultant can get back to them quicker, because we do need to track that recruitment process. Yes, we could start to use this technology to say, well, there are, I've got a resume. We have something that says, well, I can take Rob's resume and I can look at all of my vacancies and understand whether he's suitable for any of those vacancies. We could feed that back to the candidate straight away to say, there are a number of opportunities that we think we have for you. We'll be in touch, and then schedule that call directly into the diary of the consultant. So I think it's I guess you're right, Rob. You mentioned it earlier. There is so much out there now in terms of AI, and it's being thrown at everything. It's almost like someone's just got this, this peg, and they're just trying it in every hole to see whether or not they, does it fit in there? Does it fit in there? Can we apply it to that? And actually, we need to boil this down to the basics, which is there is a process, there is a candidate. We hire here all the time, and we use our clients to do our hiring. And the key one for them, the key feedback from them is, it was great because I got an email straight away telling me something that has happened, that that they've received it and they will be in touch, and then it's in their diary, so they are phoning them and they are getting in touch. They will have applied for maybe 5 other jobs, and on some of those they've heard absolutely nothing, no acknowledgement at all, and that's poor form, not just from a technology standpoint, but from a recruiting standpoint. But I think that's where, if you're building a decent brand, you need to have tools that will actually supplement some of that stuff and at least say, look, we need to acknowledge this, and maybe have, I don't know, sequencing or within the tool that says, yeah, no, we will keep you warm and fuzzy and up to date on stuff, even while the consultant is busy working on other things. But at least as a brand, the agency is not seen to be ignoring them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it also goes back to what we were talking about before about the reputational stuff. And I know we're going to come on to talk more about specific AI technologies and how they're being leveraged in the recruitment industry today. But there's that whole reputational piece. When you're trying to build a brand, people have a perception of that brand. And if you think about maybe the retail industry, if you apply for a job with a retail company and you don't get a great candidate experience, is that going to impact the way that you engage with that retail brand as opposed to their employer brand? If you think about a candidate applying for a role at, I don't know, let's just go with Tesco. I don't know why. If you apply for a role at Tesco and you don't have a great experience, you apply for a job and you don't hear anything for a number of weeks, are you going to be hacked off to the point where you won't go in the door anymore? Maybe a bad example, but that's kind of what it comes down to. The employer brand, I think, is so important when it comes to recruitment, and there are lots of technologies that are popping up in the industry that are helping to support that.
And I know, before you start, because I know you're itching, because I can sense it, Rob. Just on the back of that one, you make a really good point, and that is that if every agency was running the same level of technology, right, then, and like every supermarket was exactly the same, then how would you differentiate one from the other? And it's good experiences. And good experiences come from people, and I think we cannot forget that that's typically the differentiator between what is the agencies, the clients that I have the most respect for, are the ones that actually give a damn about the candidates and want to see candidates progress. And it's not just about making placements. It's different in the contingent workforce area, but certainly, at the top in the sort of the perm fixed term contract area, that's where we make a difference. Or, if we had literally all these faceless recruitment consultants, which is all powered by AI and everything else, even if it is sending out these sort of feeds of information just to keep the candidates warm and fuzzy, at the end of the day, it comes down to the recruiters in that business that will make that difference, because a good experience means they'll come back. You just got to look at stuff like the work we're doing with great recruiters to understand that feedback loop, which is, yes, it's reputational management. And the ultimate there is that, yes, you get good feedback on your recruiters, you get good feedback from your clients and from the candidates, and that shows that it's working, right? And we cannot lose sight of that stuff. Kendra, I know that you're twitching to get onto
Yeah, I was on mute. Yes, because we have all of this amazing technology. We know that that personal touch is what, that experience is what gets people to come back. But how do we get the Megan and Jeffs, I think, for the marketers, in our question panel, who are saying, okay, how do I get my recruiters to use these tools? How do I get them to use this technology and to embrace it? I have a couple thoughts on this. One being, again, find someone who doesn't want to embrace it, work with them on 1 or 2 prospects. And up front, it seems like a lot of effort for a small return, but you're getting buy-in, and they'll see, okay, this actually worked with this prospect. This worked with this rec that I've been trying to fill. And do these little mini projects for your naysayers or for your folks who aren't really comfortable using the technology. And that's 1. 2, it's the experience that'll get them coming back. So just like Andy said, so think about your recruiters as your candidates, think about them as your audience, and how do you get them to enjoy using the technology? A big piece of that is getting them comfortable. I am all things technology and software. I am also a late adopter. I am the annoying person on your sales team that you have to schedule a one-on-one for 15 minutes and walk them through it yourself. You can send me 10 videos, my brain goes and I don't retain any of it. But if you sit down and have a conversation with me, I'll take a few screenshots and notes, and I'll only bother you maybe 1 or 2 times after that. And so knowing this, I always try to build a campaign around myself, because I know my weaknesses here. And that usually boils down to making sure they're really comfortable holding their hand and giving them use cases that are specific to what's in front of them right now. Recruiters are salespeople at the end of the day, and we're thinking about what's in front of us for the next 5 minutes, maybe lunch, and that big deal that we're trying to get across the board before the end of the month. Which brings me to one more point. Don't roll these out. Really think about your sales team schedule, and don't try to roll these big ideas, the new technology, the updates, anything like that out at the end of the month, the end of the queue, etc. I still am shocked how often I see that happen. So just thinking about the timing, thinking about the experience and the education.
So they want it all now, and it's just like, let's just get it in, let's just get it in. And you're right, there is some people are traditional recruiters are really good people, right? So and they don't necessarily want the technology. The younger recruiters are the ones that say, no, the technology is great because you're going to got this, that, and the other. That you'll have some. I speak to some and they're like, it's nice. If a job comes in from that client with that one, I've already got my Rolodex of all the candidates that I know exactly who would be great and that sort of stuff. And there is a piece for that, but we have to. I guess the key is you want to try and take away. So I mentioned heavy lifting earlier. So if they're that good, make them focus on the stuff that they're good at. It's like building a team, right? You don't want clones. You don't want 5 people in a team that are all clones. You want people who are good at certain things and leverage those experiences and that knowledge within that team. And that's what makes a team good. It's no different with the recruiters. So if they're good at being interactive with clients and candidates and stuff, then embrace that. But then you've got to get rid of some of the noise, and that noise is really where the technology comes to play. So technology for technology, rather than it's we're just going to apply this. Everybody needs to be running to the same thing. Everything's going to be, you've got to push this button and this button and this button. So we need to make it very simple, which is that it becomes just an inherent part of the process. As soon as I send an email with a CV attached, I'm automatically going to produce a summary for that. So I've done all, and then you can go in and edit that before you send it and so on, and make it just a fundamental. It's already there, so it's not not a case of you got to click this and then there's 14 clicks and a drag down and then you've got to put this over here. That's where you're gonna get some of these guys who switch off. So the technology has to complement a traditional recruitment process, rather than it needs to be something that's sort of knitted into it, really, rather than something that just sits alongside and it's this thing I've got to keep up to date. That if it's seen like that, then you're going to get the resistance, and that's where change management becomes a problem, right?
100%. I think that is all very, very good advice, and I feel like the way in which not just AI, but the way in which kind of technology has evolved over the last not even few years, but going back maybe the last 10 years or so, I think the staffing and recruitment tech industry is expanding, and I think the lines of what technology was is becoming a bit blurred. I think there are so many providers in the space to kind of take into consideration. And I don't know, Andy, if that's a nice segue into the AI and automation that I know is also on the agenda today as well.
Yeah, do we want to go into that last
topic?
Yeah.
Take that as a yes, Storm.
Yes, sorry. I mean, Rob basically did my job. He queued everything up so well. I was like, I don't think I need to jump in here, but
beautifully. You did.
Yeah, I think AI and automation just seem to be the clear, the clear front runners right now in terms of like the evolution of recruitment technology. And Rob, to your point, it's not just recruitment technology; it's all technology. And I think to the point I just made, it's a case of how do we apply that? How do we pepper AI and automation onto a process? And it's more about becoming more productive and leaving me to do the stuff I do best rather than anything else. So automation is wonderful because that for me is all about let's not drop the ball, right? So if I'm going to send out, if I'm running, 15 jobs and I've got, 30 candidates to look at today and so on and so on, I need something that's going to just keep putting stuff in my diary, making sure I always follow up. And, there's an interview that's happened yesterday, I need to follow up on today, or I've set some resumes in, I need to chase up on those, whether that's internal or to the client itself. So for me, it's like we need to have these things in place because it is fast moving. We try and do a lot of work with fewer people, and some recruiters are exceptionally busy people. So for me, we have to have the tools in there that allow them to make sure that we don't drop the ball on day to day. And really, that's where that comes to the fore. And then we have things like nurture and engage. So again, as a brand, we need to make sure that as soon as I haven't spoken to my contact in over a month, a key contact of mine, a key client of mine in over a month, or my top candidates, my top 20 candidates, there's something's falls in my diary to make a phone call to them, or we automatically send them an email communication saying, how are things and so on. So that they're, for clients, we're front of mind when they have a requirement. For candidates, they feel like that we care. And that I think is where automation should come into play. And for AI, I think it's just the tool should be there to provide information to the consultants to make them make more informed decisions. Generative AI is super simple, right? That's level one. Write me an email, write me a job description, summarizes candidate's resume, whatever that be. It's super simple. Where we get into the proper true use of AI, I think, is in the second wave, which is all about engagement. It's all about making sure that we actually use these tools to say, where are the gaps? Where am I missing? Just give me something. Think outside the box, but give me something that I can use to make it better, make my engagement with this person better. For example, if I do analyze your resume, Rob, against that job, and it gives me clear areas of discussion, I'm not sitting there going, oh yeah, I didn't really read the resume in detail, but I'm going to do that now on the call. That's a waste of everybody's time. It allows us to focus.
Sorry, I was going to say, I mean, you've covered quite a lot there, but it's about, some of the stuff you spoke about before, and we've dropped in a few nuggets of AI throughout the last 50 odd minutes that we've been on this webinar. But, despite the fact that AI is still a relatively new concept in the world of recruitment, I think the application for AI in recruitment is literally endless. Whilst the fundamentals of recruitment have been the same for decades, the industry, I think, has become extremely agile, and it's evolving at an incredible pace. Not only in response to the changes that we see in the industry, but also the changes we see in the world and the advancements that we see in technology, like the introduction of AI. I also think that AI is an incredible example of how innovation can drive innovation. The fact that AI is such a broad concept that really allows tech companies and pioneers to leverage it to build powerful new applications that can support recruiters in almost every element of their role. And I think in what is relatively a short space of time, and I'm talking about the last few years here, we've seen AI being applied to just about every area of recruitment, from generating job descriptions and job adverts to interview questions, enhancing the client and candidate communications that you mentioned earlier, helping to find that balance between removing some of the heavy lifting whilst also improving the experience and making sure that things are done in a timely manner. We've seen advancements in candidate screening and candidate matching you mentioned earlier. We've not touched on programmatic advertising. That's using AI to determine the most effective advertising channels based on things like role and location and budget, for example. And then there's chatbots and AI assistants that support that client and candidate experience and engagement. We've got video interviewing where AI is being leveraged to great effect to, better evaluate interview performance, like analyzing candidate responses to assess candidate soft skills, personality, and cultural fit. You've got automated scheduling where we're using AI to support the scheduling of interviews by, automatically identifying time slots when people are available. You've got diversity and inclusion tools that Kendra, you touched on earlier, that are leveraging AI to remove bias from the process by doing things like anonymizing CVs, masking demographic information, highlighting potential bias in job descriptions, those kind of things. And then you've got skills assessments, which we've seen a load of new and existing providers in that space leveraging AI to support the evaluation of candidates' technical skills through things like online tests and simulations. And they provide a more accurate assessment of their capabilities. We've also got things like, and it sounds like, Kendra, you don't have this because you were talking about taking screenshots and making notes earlier, but note-taking and AI meeting assistants have become a really big thing now. We're seeing a huge number of our clients either adopting these or at least expressing a lot of interest in that type of tech, mostly because when I join a Zoom call, I've got a Fathom note taker that joins, and people that don't know what they are, and there's loads of them out there already, people are scratching their head and saying, what's this? And we tell them what it does, and immediately they're in love with the idea of having their own AI note taker or meeting assistant. And it's a big time saver. It's automatically recording online meetings like this one. It's producing automated transcriptions of the meeting and highlighting parts of the meeting where screens are shared, for example. You can flag parts of the meeting with certain feedback. You can automatically create lists of actions. You can create lists of questions that were asked during the meeting. And my favorite part is automatically summarizing the meeting. So you just get a few paragraphs that basically give you a digest of the last hour. And I'm just scratching the surface here, but what I think it highlights really is the way in which AI is affecting the recruitment industry. And there is a plethora of new technologies out there which have been created as a direct result of the introduction of AI, as well as a load of other technology solutions, and some of those have been around for a really long time, that are using AI to empower the solution or the solution providers, I should say, to really up their game, to help them keep up with the competition, the new players that are coming into the market. We're seeing a lot of that.
Yeah, almost creating version 2, which is with AI, right? On a traditional tool, and it is a tough one, and it's hard. We look at a lot of new, say, niche players that are coming in, tackling very small parts of a process and saying, we're going to throw AI at this. Whether they last is a tough one, and that must make it difficult for people buying recruitment technology to understand, actually, if I back this horse, is it actually going to run? Is it going to finish? It's got to be a big one, right? And then, where does this end up? For me, it's like, moving in more into the realms of predictive analytics and saying, well, AI is kind of like, it's biased and non-biased at the same time. So it knows what it knows, but it's also able to look outside the box. Most of us will have grown up through our careers with various mentors, and that gives us a way of thinking about things, tackling problems or whatever. It's kind of interesting. Largely we're too busy to think of anything differently, whereas AI doesn't have that problem, so we can look outside the box and look at think of things differently. So if you only tell ChatGPT about the structure of your business, your clients, your contacts, your interactions, your candidates, the jobs, the placements, how successful they were, how much your clients are worth, billing, is there a trend down, trend up, and so on. And that's all it knows. It's going to tell you stuff that you wouldn't think of normally, or even have the time to probably sit down and analyze. And I think that is where we really should be taking the realms of AI, which is to really assist businesses in becoming better at what they do, not just keeping up with the Joneses and saying, well, these agencies all have this tool, so I need that tool and I need to get my team on board. and it will run brilliant for 6 months, and it's like, it's a waste of time, we're going to move on to something else. Don't worry, guys, I've found this new tool, and they bring that in and they try and implement that as well. I think we've got to get away from that and look at, you know, almost like, where does this actually make a difference to the business?
Thanks, Andy.
Sorry,
I
I
feel
know.
like it brings us to a really good wrapping point. We're at time now. So I just want to give our three panelists an opportunity to provide any final thoughts or takeaways to the audience. So Kendra, I'll let you go first.
First of all, thank you again for having me. This has been a lot of fun. And I would say, again, AI, it has all of these incredible opportunities and capabilities, but it really has to be used in conjunction with human touch and human judgment to ensure that there's that fair approach, an innovative approach, et cetera, along the hiring process. And I'm really interested in us having a follow-up webinar for marketers around how they can get their recruiters to use these incredible tools.
I love that. Thanks, Kendra. Rob, any final thoughts?
Just on that, I think there was a document that you could share, right, with the audience that I think your team produced a little while ago. I'm just thinking back to something I read that might come in useful.
Yes, we have a video and a blog that's going to be released within the next week or so. So we'll make sure to share that with everybody.
Perfect. I think we've covered a ton. I think this webinar could easily have been a couple of hours, to be honest. There's so much. We've dived into a lot of subjects, but in not necessarily an immense amount of detail. And I would, yeah, happily, if anybody wants to reach out and they have any specific questions about technology or the use of technology, or they just want a little bit of advice about how to get the best out of the tech stack that they're using, or of course, I wasn't going to do a shameless plug, but if anybody is in the market and they want some new technology, we have a wonderful marketplace at rectech.io, so please do bear that in mind.
You were always going to do a shameless plug, Rob, because I know you too well.
I wasn't planning on it, Andy, but since we're talking about technology and since I know a lot about that subject, feel free to reach out if I can help in any way at all.
Thanks, Rob. Andy, final thoughts?
Yeah, just firstly, thanks to Kendra and to Rob for joining. I agree. I think this is, you know, when we started talking about doing this, we were talking for ages, quite easily. I see that there's definitely could spin off to be a podcast, because we could definitely get into some of these topics in a lot more detail, and there's a lot more topics to cover. But I think overall, I think the takeout is that technology isn't going anywhere, and we know this. We've got to get, you know, Gen Y has got to get on board. Gen Z is already very much on board. And it's going in all sorts of directions. And I think, Robin, you and I spoke about this earlier, which is think of the recruitment technology as a tower. It seems that it's not necessarily just going up at the moment, it's actually land grab. You know, the lines between what is recruitment technology seems to be blurring when you look at, you know, CRM, onboarding, payroll, and everything else that sort of sits around it. So it's a case of keeping on top of that, but in moderation, using this in moderation. But we cannot forget that recruiters are people at the end of the day, and that's the fundamental that we have to support, coming all the way back to Kendra's point.
That feels like a super place to end.
It does.
That is a great place to end. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us, for staying over a little bit longer, and for being interactive. Really appreciate it. And we'll catch you on the next webinar. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.